this is the first time since the 04-05 season that five AP All-Americans came back.
It's crazy.
So, like, throughout college basketball, like, you're seeing this. But for Mark Sears specifically, he broke the single season scoring record for Alabama last year. I don't think he'll get the career record. I don't think he's played at Alabama enough to get the career scoring record, but it provides insane experience at the point guard or at the guard position because he's played in now this will be his third year at Alabama. He's played in a Sweet 16. He's played in a Final Four.
We're talking to the people following your SEC team in college basketball the closest. This is One-on-One. Today we're talking to Christian Sykes from Crimson Crossover following Alabama Crimson Tide basketball. He's a lot like me. He's a hardcore basketball guy living in a football world. No disrespect to football whatsoever. We love football too. But he's been on the show a few times and we're glad to have him as our first guest on the One-on-One series. Christian, how you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing good. I can't wait for November.
I know it's almost here. I was sitting there thinking about it, counting down how many season previews we have left to do. And I was like, we've only got like a few weeks. We're like, what, 50 days away now from basketball? Yeah, dude, absolutely crazy. And, you know, I bet a big reason that you're feeling that right now is how about that run last year with like the Final Four and everything? Like, how big was that culturally and just like everything that's been going on with Alabama basketball? Because this is like the pinnacle, the highest this program has ever been.
Man, like, and I was so cynical following 2 years ago where, you know, you have Brandon Miller, you have Noah Clowney, you have Javon Quinterly, all of these guys that are Mark Sears that are on, you know, this roster, and you bow out in the Sweet 16s to San Diego State. And following that, leading up to the season, we all knew that we were going to take a step back defensively. I think that was pretty clear when you lose a top 3 lottery pick or top 2 lottery pick, and then Noah Clowney as well, and Charles Bediako. You're not going to do very well defensively. And I was in a state of mind where I'm like, man, Alabama basketball is never going to get past the Elite Eight. Like, they're just never going to do it. It's just never going to happen. And I just kind of accepted that. And for the season, you know, throughout the season, it didn't look that way. And then it's March, man. You get it. You go into March and things
all bets are off at that point. You know, it was funny. We were talking about it like on the March Madness episodes and the previews for the tournament and all that stuff. And we were talking about like the history of a team that had like a less than 100 KenPom defense. And like you had also picked North Carolina to beat Alabama in the Sweet 16. You were like, that's where we're going to all get off this roller coaster. And they just surprised us all during the course of that Final Four run. And I know that had to be just a great feeling for a program that's gone from the come on down days in the stadium where they were playing the Price is Right theme to tell the fans in the upper decks to come down to, I imagine ticket sales are absolutely crazy right now for Coleman.
Well, and you just talk about the come on down days. That happened last season.
Yeah.
They told fans to come down, and they played. Fans walked down to this last season when we went to the Final Four. For me, I cried after we won the Sweet 16. I was like, I didn't cry after we won the Elite Eight for some reason, but like the Sweet 16, I was like, this just like, it meant so much. And for people like myself and other Alabama fans that have followed this program for so long and, you know, put our, you know, time, effort, you know, sweat. I haven't put blood into the program. I'm not a player, and I haven't gotten hurt.
But it's fans talking about it and making it relevant.
It means a lot. And for the program itself, like you saw it in the off season, like you get Cliff Amore coming in, you get Chris Youngblood coming in, you get Houston Mallett, you flip LeBaron Filan, top 40 recruit from Kansas. Mark Sears comes back, Grant Nelson comes back, Latrell Wrightsell comes back, like Mo Diabate, like the list goes on and on and on. Where, like, how could Jaron Stevenson, who's projected to be a lottery pick or a first round pick potentially this season, like I said, I just can't wait till November. I'm excited.
One player in there that I definitely know that we have to talk about, and that's Mark Sears. I mean, like, he goes out and does the NBA Combine thing this offseason. How big is the significance of his return? Like, I mean, that's like almost the face of Alabama basketball right now, and then very relevant right now on the national stage.
So not just Mark Sears and just college basketball in general. Kevin Sweeney put out a tweet today. This is the first time since the 04-05 season that 5 AP All-Americans came back.
It's crazy.
So like throughout college basketball, like you're seeing this, but for Mark Sears specifically, he broke the single season scoring record for Alabama last year. I don't think he'll get the career record. I don't think he's played at Alabama enough to get the career scoring record, but it provides insane experience at the point guard or at the guard position because he's played in now this will be his third year at Alabama. He's played in a Sweet 16. He's played in a Final Four. And for someone that a team that lost like Aaron Estrada, they lost Rylan Griffin. You lost Davin Cosby, Chris Parker, some of the guard depth that you were expecting to have this, or maybe not expecting, but, when you're building a roster, that's kind of an expectation that they stay, to having an experienced guard like Mark Sears back is just so important and so valuable for the younger guys that we have on the roster to learn. And obviously the scoring. Obvious. I mean, that I don't feel like I need to talk about that. That is pretty well known.
I mean, the scoring is definitely there. I mean, he put up like 21 points a game or something like that. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was super high. But, speaking of that scoring and talking about like how they're building things around here, how do you think those numbers are going to be impacted this season? Because there's a lot of shooters on this team that Nate Oats pulled in out of the portal and out of the freshman class as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough question, and it's
very hard to answer.
And I don't envy the coaching staff for having to make those decisions, but it's a good problem to have.
It's a great problem to have. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. You look at it. Obviously, I think Mark's going to get his, probably 17, 20 points a game. I don't think Cliff Amori is going to be that type of like big scorer like you see with like Janai Broome. Or like you've seen potentially like with Armando Bacot in the past, things like that. I don't think that that's kind of his role. He's going to be that kind of defensive Charles Bediako type of player. Grant Nelson is probably going to be in the low teens as far as scoring. I think Chris Youngblood's going to be in double digit scoring. Latrell Wrightsell, if he stays healthy. I mean, he was a top 5 most efficient scorer in college basketball last year. So I think that health is just his thing. And then I haven't even talked about Darian Reed, who's a projected lottery pick.
Another outrageous player. He's in our top 5 for freshman 15 this season too. Like we've got him, and who else is it? Trey Johnson out of Texas. Like there's so many good freshmen coming to the SEC this season. It's going to be exciting to watch. And Alabama's got 4 of the best 15 freshmen coming into the SEC this year. They've got youth, they've got talent, they got experience. I mean, what doesn't the Tide have this season? I mean, and then what we're talking about Mark Sears right now. Player of the year candidate, not just in the SEC, but like nationally. Like he's got some pretty good odds. What do you think his chances are against guys like Cooper Flagg, RJ Davis, Hunter Dickinson, Janai Broome even's in that conversation, Ryan Kalkbrenner and all those guys? He's like plus 600 right now in Vegas odds.
So I think it's such a weird thing because the player of the year is not necessarily like
it's voted on. Multiple people vote on it, and like there's like the CBS one. There's also like the Nate Smith one, and all the other different ones who do a player of the year.
I think his chances go as the Alabama goes. If Alabama wins a lot, and if they're number 1 not overall seed, but number 1 seed, potential contender in the SEC, I think he has a really good chance as long as he's leading the team. I think he'll have to keep the same type of scoring efficiency that he did last year, and I think he's going to have to improve a little bit defensively. To kind of really win that. But I mean, you said it, RJ Davis, you got Cooper Flagg, you got Ryan Kalkbrenner. Like it's hard to win against guy. Like he's going to have to do more than just score is kind of my point. Because those guys are going to get rebounds. They're, going to get blocks. They're going to get steals. They're going to get, Ryan Kalkbrenner is probably going to average a double-double.
Chris Youngblood, Nate Oats said that he's not getting talked enough about. I know there's some players out there with some higher comparison, but like we've heard Nate kind of loosely compare him to Janelle Davis, who came to Arkansas. He was Chris Youngblood was the American Player of the Year last year for the American Conference. Really big, physical, tough, and an excellent shooter. Can you talk to us a little bit about Chris Youngblood and what the hype is around him in Tuscaloosa?
Well, and this isn't a slight to anybody on the Alabama team. He brings leadership. Not saying that Mark and Grant and those guys aren't leaders, but they don't tend to be vocal leaders. If you watch an Alabama game, they kind of like are very it like inward looking. They don't really talk a lot on the court, things like that. Chris is going to let people know and put people in their place. And then you talk about physical finishing. We talked about it a little bit earlier where there's a lot of shooting. There isn't a lot of like strong get to the basket type of physical finishers that are on this team. And so he brings that type of dynamic that I feel is kind of lacking a little bit. And on top of that, he shot 40 something percent from three last season and was the co-player of the year with Janelle Davis, who's at Arkansas.
Congratulations to my team on that one.
But I think that he brings the most important value that he brings is leadership. I think that he's gonna like that when he came in and he was doing like his introduction interviews with people, like that's what he said he wanted to do. He wanted to be a leader on the team, and so he also is from Tuscaloosa.
That's exciting too. It's a hometown hero story in there as well.
Yeah,
I found that, and you mentioned the 40% 3-point shooter. You know how many guys you got on this team that shot 40% from three last season?
7.
It's a good guess, but it's 4. You got 4 40% shooters from 3-point last season. Then you also got 5 45% from the regular field, and then 5 players who averaged double digits last year in points. Like, look, last year's offense was good. Is this going to be better, man? Like, this is insane.
Well, so my 7, it wasn't an educated guess. I was including the freshmen in there as well.
Okay. Well, that's
I apologize. I apologize. Is it going to be better? I think there's a chance.
That's insane. It was historic last year.
I think a very big and a key component for this team is the hire of Brian Adams. And it's the reason for this is because he's a defensive coach and he's a pure defensive coach from the NBA. He's going to come in, basically be the defensive coordinator of Alabama, which leaves Nate and Ryan Pannone able to solely focus on offense. And last year, Nate couldn't solely focus on offense because they didn't have that type of defensive guy on the staff. Could it be better? I think so. I think Cliff Amori brings a different dynamic that Alabama did not have last season, and being able to get to the dunker's spot, being a lob threat, pop like pick and roll guy. I think that allows Grant Nelson to play on the wing more. You'll see him.
That's what I'm really excited about is Grant Nelson getting out there that 4 spot a little bit more.
He'll play like he did versus North Carolina. That's his role. I think Jaron Stevenson is going to take a step up. You saw him versus Clemson, and I think he's going to kind of take that next step. And then obviously, again, if Latrell Wrightsell can stay healthy. I mean, he was a top 5 most efficient player in college basketball last year.
Again, this entire offense last year was absolutely insane. You mentioned Ryan there in that conversation, one of the assistant coaches there. And it's interesting because there's a conversation going around over the summer about the mid-range shot right now. And John Calipari was talking about it a little bit. He was talking about how it's still relevant, how he's got all these guys in the NBA on max contracts who shoot from the mid-range. And then Ryan was talking about, Pannone was talking about, Nate's got a policy about the mid-range, but it's not really that he's going to punish any player for taking the mid-range. We've heard Nate say different things as far as calling it garbage, the mid-range shot garbage. And then there's also really wanting to educate players on it. What's kind of your thought? I still hold that it is an efficient shot if you have a good mid-range shooter, but it's not for everybody. What's kind of your thought on what Nate's actual policy is on the mid-range shot?
It's funny that you talked about that because I think he talked about that on our podcast.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because we interviewed Ryan over the offseason, and I'm pretty sure that's where. And for those of you listening that don't know, Ryan Pannone coached for the Birmingham Squadron, and he said on the podcast when he was the head coach that anyone that took a mid-range shot counted as 0 points in practice. And so all it would do is make the other players mad because they would take a mid-range shot, and he's like, "Oh, it's not worth anything." So you just lost
the out of the game entirely in his mind.
But the mid-range shot, I think it's advantageous in certain spots. Like if there's a player that can get to his spot and shoot it semi-efficiently, for like mid-range shooting. Like if you can shoot like 50% or whatever,
I think the
then
magic number in the NBA this day for it to be more efficient than, and this is NBA, it's going to be
yeah,
different in college, but it's 57%. And normally that shot's unassisted and it's by someone who is an elite mid range shooter. And that makes it more efficient than a three at 36%. So
yeah.
it's crazy that point per shot difference. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was giving some
No,
context, buddy.
no. You're right. And so if there's a player that can do it efficiently, then I don't think that it's in your best interest as a coach to take that player out of, doing something that makes them comfortable. Um, Kind of like what Oates said, or what Oates has said, which is they're going to allow that player to take that shot, but then educate them on like, hey, like you took that shot, if you miss it, like this is how much points per efficiency you lost by taking that shot, just so that you're aware, and
Yeah.
just kind of have that in the player's mind of like, hey, should I be taking these shots, or is there a better shot that should I be looking for?
Yeah, and the biggest thing I took away from reading up on it was don't turn down an open three. Like,
Yep.
just don't do that. And that's your best bet out there because you're not going to get benched for taking the mid range, but you're going to pass up an open three. Not the best idea in the world in this offense. We talked about the offense a little bit. I'll speed this up just a little bit because I know you got places to be, but real big conversation that's being had about Alabama, not just by me, but nationally and everywhere else, was the defense last year, and how that's going to be the thing that determines how far Alabama can go for this coming season. We saw a widespread of just when you looked at teams that were like top 30 offenses, but sub 70 defenses, like the spread on that was like Illinois, Baylor, Kentucky, Florida, Indiana State, Iowa, Florida Atlantic, Princeton, just all over the place where all those teams ended up. And of course, Alabama's in the Final Four is the king of all of those teams. Are you concerned about the defense, and how do you think the defense has kind of been improved over the offseason?
Well, I think the improvement is bringing in Brian Adams. He came from the Pistons, so now Alabama has two former NBA assistants on their staff, and then you have Preston Murphy, who's the I say the best recruiter in college basketball, but one of the best. I'm a little biased, but one of the
I'm
best
sure you are
recruiters.
just a little biased over there.
Just a little biased, but and then you bring in Cliff. You bring in Cliff Amori, who I think Alabama had 112 blocks as a team last year. Cliff Amori had 93 by himself.
He's got the best defensive rating out of all the transfers that came into this Alabama team at 90.7. That's a great number.
And then, like I said, you move Grant out of the 5 spot, which I think at times he kind of got out physicaled a little bit last season. And you hope that Mark improves on ball defense. I think that he did pretty well in the NCAA tournament last year, but outside of that, I think that he was so solely focused on scoring, to the point where his defense kind of got a little lackluster at times. And then, a potential loss there is Rylan Griffin, who I think was one of our best on-ball defenders last year in the wing. How you replace him? I mean, like I said, you have Darian Reed coming in. I've heard really good things about LeBaron Filan, who was kind of a last-second addition to the team that, from all accounts out of practice, he's been one of our best defenders as a freshman.
Yeah.
And has locked up Mark Sears multiple times in practice. So
that's not an easy thing to do. That's I would put that on top of my resume right there. Locked up Mark Sears. Just don't include the in practice part. Just say you locked up Mark Sears and you're done with that conversation. So let's just turn the page here a little bit. Instead of talking about the roster, just the great season that's ahead for you guys. I looked at the non-conference schedule and man, you've got the potential where almost every dang game, because you got good mid-majors and then top-level teams and some teams that people are probably not aware of are probably going to be close to the tournament, if not in the tournament. There might be 11 out of 12 out of the non-conference that are possible tournament teams on this schedule, but you're talking Purdue, Illinois, Houston, Rutgers, North Carolina, Creighton. Which games are you looking the most forward to? How do you see the resume and all these opportunities in the net? And, how does the scheduling really just kind of help Alabama get ready for SEC play and the NCAA tournament?
It's kind of an off the wall one, but the game I'm kind of looking forward to the most, not because this is like just like pure like enjoyment for me, is the North Dakota game.
Really? Okay.
The reason why is they're going to play at North Dakota, so Grant Nelson's family can watch the game, go and attend the game for him.
That's awesome. Like I love it when coaches do things like that. I think Cal did
Um,
that for a couple of his guys when he went to go play Penn last year for the guys who grew up in the New Jersey, Philadelphia area.
so not necessarily because it's a big matchup, and I think Alabama is probably going to win that game, but just because like that type of stuff's like interesting to me. That out they're doing that for Grant Nelson and for his family. But outside of that, I'm really looking forward to the UNC game, mostly
Definitely.
because I live in Charlotte, so I'm going to be going up to the Dean Center and attending that game.
Well, I mean, when you get the opportunity, you take it, you know?
Yeah, it's not often, and it's crazy because Auburn's going to be like 5 miles down the road playing Duke the
In
same night.
Cameron. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm excited about that game. I'm excited about Creighton because they're our biggest rival. If you know, you know. And then, I mean, I the Houston game. Alabama's played Houston, I think, 3 out of the last 4 years,
I
and
think
as
you're right. Yeah. Like it's something ridiculous. The first time we talked was about the Houston game, I think.
and Alabama's won the last two. So I'm excited to, and I'm also intrigued about the Players Invitational, how that's going to look.
That's
It's,
a unique setup. Yeah, I think we were talking about that this summer, but the opportunity to get NIL money into your program just by going out and playing a basketball game, like that's a unique opportunity. And I'm curious to see how like some of the well-established MTEs like Maui adjust to a tournament like that. That's such an interesting concept, and it's really a big disturbance. But Nate actually talked about that Players Invitational a little bit, and how it was an opportunity for Alabama basketball.
yeah, and for it's an opportunity for Alabama basketball to go on to this new big stage that's going to be, I really think that like this type of what they're trying to do is going to be unless the NCAA comes in and says, you can't do this,
Can't
which
do
I
it.
could
Yeah.
totally see. But if they don't say that, then that's going to be how the MTEs are going to be, because otherwise you're behind. I think the each school, quote unquote, gets $1 million in NIL funds, quote unquote,
Quote unquote.
um, from from the MTE, and then if the winner gets an additional million. So in college football, that's not that much money. In college basketball, that's
That's
a lot of money.
That is a lot of money in college basketball, and that's definitely an opportunity. We'll see if they. I've got my concerns. It's not really so much with the NCAA. It's just knowing how much MTs traditionally make tournament and revenue wise. So I'm a little nervous there on how that'll play out because there are some negative histories. But I went through that in an episode during the summer. So if you guys want to listen to that, it's our players era tournament episode that we were talking about all this stuff and some of the controversy behind it. But it's an interesting tournament. So let's turn to some of the conference stuff here. Look, Auburn and Alabama, we got to talk about this, are both being picked somewhere in the top three in the SEC consistently everywhere you turn. I got them 1 and 2 right now in the conference. Alabama 1, Auburn 2. Just be honest. Is this going to be the best year that we've seen out of the Iron Bowl of basketball this season?
One, I think so, mainly because um, for the first time in I don't know how long, both games are on Saturdays.
That's great.
They're not a midweek game like they have been for the past like decade. Like I'm not even joking when I say they'll pass decade. Every single
There's been at least
Alabama,
one Wednesday one in there or a Tuesday one.
yeah,
Yeah.
there and so there's an opportunity for Alabama and Auburn to potentially host College Game Day again, which I think they both did last year. And I I think that Auburn brings a ton of experience. I think they have 10 seniors on their roster.
Oh, yeah. It's insane. They're all upperclassmen except for their freshmen that they're bringing
Yeah.
in.
And Alabama brings back the core of their Final Four team. So I'm excited about it. The Twitter sphere is going to be in shambles come January, I think. I'm not looking forward to that aspect of it, but as far as the pure basketball, I'm excited to see. For me, with Auburn, the big concern I have is their guard play. Their front court's going to be really good as always. I mean, Janai Broom's probably a first team All American, most likely. But I know that they brought in Peegs from I think Furman. But I like, are you going to start Cheney Johnson? Are you going to start Chad Baker Mazar? Like, what is that going to look like? That's kind of my concern with Auburn, but Um, I think if they can figure that out, then it's going to be 1-2, which is going to be hell because I think the final game of the season is Alabama versus Auburn. I'm
It
pretty
is on
sure.
March 8th. And like I said, if projections hold, like that's got some serious potential. Like if College Game Day is not at that one and Auburn and Alabama are, right there neck and neck at the end of the season with a chance to win the SEC tournament or the SEC regular season title, I don't know what College Game Day is doing at that point if they're not coming to that game in Neville. So like that one's got the potential to be just absolutely insane. So when we talk about the conference schedule, this league's very, very deep. You maybe turn to Gary Parrish's top 25-1 here in the preseason. You had Alabama, Auburn, Arkansas, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Texas, Florida, all in the top 25, according to Gary Parrish. And not to mention, there are some teams that had some excellent transfer classes as well. 7 out of the top 20 transfer classes this offseason came out of the SEC. So besides Auburn, who worries you? Who interests you the most in matchups against Alabama for this coming conference season?
I think one kind of off the wall is Florida,
Yeah, that's going
um,
to be a great one. I'm
because
circling that one.
uh, Golden does a really good job scheming against Alabama. We saw it, last year, where we played them 3 times. They blew us out twice.
Yeah,
Um, so I think that one's going to be interesting. Tennessee is always going to be a dogfight just because it's a contrasting style type of game where more often than not, Tennessee kind of gets the best of Alabama. Um, I'm intrigued by Arkansas. Just
I'm intrigued by Arkansas. I don't know.
um, just because you guys brought in so many people, and Cal's known for flipping rosters. Like that's not like a uncommon thing for him. But how that kind of all comes together and the team molds, I think you're going to have a better chance of molding early rather than what Muss did, where you were terrible to start conference play almost every single season.
I could go into. I'm going to go into Arkansas later, so like people will hear my thoughts. We'll do our one-on-one with that one. Surprise on who the guest is later. I'll reveal that in time. But it's yeah, that one's going to be the Arkansas deep dive is going to be fun. So I'll save everybody some time before we go crazy on Arkansas here. But I trust me, I could talk about it for a while.
Yeah. And then a team kind of off the radar that no one's really talking about is Mississippi State.
Yeah, I would
Um,
agree with that.
I think that they're a team that didn't. I'm pretty sure they made the NCAA tournament
Yeah,
last year,
yeah, they
right?
lost in the first
Yeah,
round. That was the one where you kept going. I picked MSU when we were doing the
yeah,
bracket, and
yeah.
I
That's
was
right.
like,
That's right.
yeah, I'm going with State.
Yeah, yeah. That one intrigues me just because like they kind of looked like they were turning in the right direction. And then obviously like I'm just
Ole
saying
Miss
every
is
team.
fascinating. Yeah,
I'm saying every team
seriously,
now.
we are going to go
Yeah,
through every team. That's how deep this league is
yeah.
this year. And so, like, that comes to my last question here. What are your expectations? Like, what are you thinking? What's going to end up happening with this team this season? You got a deep
I,
conference, you got a heck of a non-conference schedule, but you're coming off a Final Four run and returning that core.
yeah. I think for Alabama, I think that they're probably going to lose 2 games, 3 games in the non-conference. I think that like if you come out, I think there's 13 non-conference games. If you come out at 12-1, like you're probably ranked the best team in college basketball just because of the schedule.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, with the conference schedule, I think Alabama actually has a pretty even like across the board type of like there's no backloaded or front loaded type of conference schedule like we had last year where the back of Alabama's conference schedule was just insane. Um, so I mean I expect at least the top 3 finish in the SEC. I've 13-5, 14-4, I think. But expectations. I always say expectations kind of kill you. But
The
I'm just
hope that'll
hoping that,
kill you.
huh?
I said it's the hope that'll kill you, as Ted
Yeah.
Lasso likes to say, or doesn't like to say.
Um, so I just want to make the NCAA tournament. I think I would say I'm happy with this season is if we get to a Sweet 16. And then after that, like Alabama's only been past the Sweet 16 3 or now 2 times. So I can't be upset with, getting past the Sweet 16, I'm not going
Yeah.
to put national championship expectations on this team.
Oh, I will, but it's again though. I think that is a respectable finish. Anytime you get into the second weekend, that's one of the you're one of the best 16 teams in the country at that point. Like it's a
Yeah.
heck of an accomplishment to make that far. So I think all of that's reasonable expectations and something I think every Tide fan would be like sitting there nodding their head, going, "Yeah, he's probably holding back a little bit what he actually thinks over there." But yeah, we know the potential. It's championship caliber, but getting to the Sweet 16 is always just kind of that confirmation as well. So Christian, why don't you tell everybody where they can find Crimson Crossover?
Yeah, we're Crimson X over on Twitter, Crimson Crossover on YouTube, Crimson Crossover on Instagram. We don't really post on Instagram, so you don't have to follow that account. But we do basketball. We launched a baseball podcast. We launched a golf podcast. We have a Tide Hoops history podcast if you're interested in that. And we'll I think we're recording on Monday our like preseason or one of our preseason podcasts. So be sure to check that out. We did some interviews with Preston Murphy if you want to listen to about Alabama's recruiting. Brian Pannone if you want to listen to Alabama's offensive type of scheme, and then we actually just did one last week with LeBaron Filan. If you want to kind of hear his thoughts on kind of his summer at Alabama, so that's where you can find us.
Absolutely. Hey guys, definitely go check him out. I'm a listener as well. I know Christian's a listener of my show because I've seen him subscribe to our YouTube channel. But honestly, great content over there. I do listen to him when I'm in the car every now and then so I can keep up with Alabama basketball. Highly, highly recommend for you guys out there. Guys, if you have not already, please like and subscribe to the Hoops Southbound Show. We greatly appreciate it. Love having you guys here talking basketball with us. And we'll catch you in the next one. For now, I want to say thank you so much to Christian for being on here today.
Thank you.